Welcome back. Today we are going to be breaking down every change in Slay the Spire 2 beta version 102, and we will be analyzing how they might impact your future runs. Let's get right into it. Now the first and arguably the largest change is Ascension 6, going from less rest sites to remove start at 100 gold and increase by 50 gold. Now previously A6 meant there is one fewer rest site on each act, and since there are so many different paths through the act, you don't even notice the difference. Now removes are significantly more expensive at shops. If you are removing 2 cards in your run, you are going to be spending 75 more gold. If you are removing 3 cards in your run, you're going to be spending 150 more gold. That's quite a large debuff to the player, and perhaps rewards building towards a larger deck instead of a small and consistent deck every single run. Getting 2 or 3 removes are still reasonable. However, you will be down probably 1 or 2 relics. Going further than 2 or 3 moves per run now becomes unrealistic, and removing in early act 1 also gets a lot worse. Now let's get into the card changes. So first up on Silent, Blade of Ink is completely reworked. It used to say this turn whenever you're playing an attack, gain 2 strength for 1 energy. That card was pretty much never picked. Now it says add 2 Inky shifts to your hand. Now Inky means the shift deals 2 additional damage and applies a weakness. So it will be 6 damage and 1 weak. This card by itself is already very good, and with any sort of shift synergies, it's complete bonkers. If you have a Knife Trap, the Inky shifts will also get replayed and get extra value. And the fact that Inky is an enchantment, it means any relics that interact with the enchantment also works on those Inky shifts. Blade of Ink is now a very strong card. Let us move on to Necrobinder. Borrow Time, it used to say 0 energy, apply 3 doom to yourself, gain 1 energy, upgrade to gaining 2. Now Borrow Time says 1 energy, gain 4 energy, upgrading to gaining 6. Cards cost an additional energy this turn. Borrow Time used to just be a reusable energy source to make some of your turns slightly larger. Now it serves a more niche purpose to play your more expensive cards. For example, Berry, who costs 4. Now you can play that with Borrow Time with no problem. The new card doesn't apply Doom to yourself anymore, which is arguably a downside, since applying Doom to yourself interacts with Shroud, which gains you free block. The new Borrow Time is a little bit more niche. You're not really gonna be looking to pick Borrow Time without any high cost cards in your deck. However, if you do have those high cost cards in your deck, it can be quite strong. Eradicate an X cost card that retains is one of the best use cases for Borrow Time, since it would not cost an additional energy. Next up on Silent, we have Leading Strike getting buffed. It used to deal 7 damage and add 1 shiv. Now it deals 3 damage and add 2 shivs. Overall damage has not changed, but the fact that it adds 2 shifts just make it play with relics, with your powers like accuracy, much better. So Leading Strike is now a much better card. A quite solid Act 1 pick that has very good synergy potential. Speedsters are nerfed on Silent. Whenever you draw a card, deal 2 AoE, now it deals only 1 AoE. In the unnerfed state, Speedster was already not a great card. You're not picking it in most of your runs, and now the card is completely unplayable. So the card went from bad to worse. Untouchable is also nerfed. 2 energy slide gain 7 block, now gain 6 block. They can nerf Untouchable to gain 4 block, and it still would be a good card, so this nerf is not super significant. Still a very powerful card to be picking up if you have any discard synergies. Let's now look at all the changes to the different enemies. Skulking Colony Elite is buffed. Now it attacks you on every turn and deals more damage. As you can see on this turn where Skulking Colony has a bunch of block, it used to just buff itself. Now it buffs itself and attacks you. Overall, a very good change. Skulking Colony was over nerfed in the last patch as it just didn't do anything. Now Skulking Colony will be a more respectable elite. Doormaker is reworked again. Every patch they have to rework Doormaker. So now on the Grasp turn, it will attack you in addition to sucking your dexterity and strength. So this intent used to just not have the damage part. Now it has 23 damage. In addition, Grasp used to say your first card costs 1 more. Now it says whenever you play a card, lose energy. That makes your your turn much worse. You could still spam your 0-cost cards if you run out of energy, but you just have overall a much smaller turn. The Doormaker hopefully is now more dangerous and can put up a fight against players. In the previous patch, it was very easy. Now let's look at some changes to some different relics. Fur Coat is changed. Upon pickup Mark 7 combats, they have 1 HP. It used to not work on enemy that spawn in or the Axe bot, which will respawn after you kill the Axe bot for the first time. Now, anytime the Axe bot respawn or the enemy spawn in during combat, they will also have 1 HP. So a slight buff to this relic. Not significant in any way, and this relic wasn't really picked ever, but now it's slightly better. Probably still would not see play most of the time. Whispering Earring from Vaku is also changed. Previously, if you had Toolbox, you completely negate the downside. Vaku will not play your first turn for you if you had Toolbox. Now, the downside of Whispering Earring also actually applies correctly. Toolbox no longer negates the downside. History Course Relic has been changed. When it plays a copy of an X-cost card, it uses the energy on your current turn instead of last turn. So it used to be if you play Dirge for 20 energy, the next turn History Course will replay Dirge for 20 energy. Now if you play Dirge for 20 energy, it will replay it for 3 energy, assuming your base energy is 3. This is good and bad. For example, you can play an X-cost card for 0 now, and the next turn it will play for 3. So it's a higher floor for History Course and a lower ceiling, since you cannot duplicate X-cost card for an obscene amount of energy 2 turns in a row. In the grand scheme of things, this is still a completely overpowered relic, and this change doesn't change too much. Unsettling Lamp is also changed. Each combat, the first time you play a card that debuffs an enemy, double its effect. The interaction with Dominate has been fixed. It used to be that you will apply double amount of vulnerable, then gain 2 strength for each vulnerable, assuming Dominate is not upgraded, effectively quadrupling the strength gain. Now it only applies the double vulnerable part, and you only gain 1 strength per vulnerable. Still a very powerful relic, of course, but way less good with Dominate specifically. Finally, let's look at some event changes. Hungry for Mushrooms has been changed. It now upgrade 2 random cards instead of 3 random cards in the bottom option. In this event, usually you never click the top option because drawing 2 fewer cards at the start of each combat is so punishing. So effectively, the event is nerfed on the option that you click 99% of the time. This event was already not super high value. Losing 15 HP could be dangerous, and in Act 3, the 3 random upgrades usually doesn't matter too much. Now it's only 2 random upgrades, which makes this event quite bad. Waterlogged Scriptorium is buffed. Tentacle Quail gold cost has been reduced by 10 gold from 65 to 55. The Prickly Sponge also gets buffed. It now costs 99 instead of 155. This event was already very strong. Adding Retain 2 cards is a very powerful effect. Very often you do not have 2 targets to put Retain on, so the middle option is click a decent amount of time. But now for only 99 gold, adding to Retain to any 2 cards is kind of no-brainer, even to base card to function as a pseudo removal, since you don't need to redraw the cards if you retain it. So a strong event gets even stronger. Whispering Hollow is also buffed. Exchange gold now costs around 35 gold, 35 plus minus 9. It used to cost 50 gold, and the bottom option is unchanged. Most of the time, you're still going to be clicking the bottom option since transforms are extremely valuable. But if you're struggling to survive the next few floors, now getting 2 potions is slightly cheaper. And that is it for the major changes of the patch. They have also implemented more art, more animations, and the badge system at the end of your run, but none of them affects gameplay. They did not change too many things in this patch compared to the previous patches, but the changes they implemented are quite impactful. The Doormaker change is potentially very big, as it's a much more challenging fight now. The most interesting change for me is the Necrobinder Borrow Time change. The cards now perform a pretty specific role in any given run, and I'm excited to see how it pans out in actual gameplay. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this patch? Do you think it's moving the game into an overall more fun direction? That is all for today's patch review. Subscribe for future patch reviews and Slay the Spire 2 strategy content. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.